Right, people, I think we're good to go. How you doing tonight? This is the Brews at 10, here on my left eye. I'm your host, Lefty. You're all very welcome here. I'm Solidari-Tea. It's terrific to see you all tonight. Don't close the stream though. Hopefully the jokes will get better. Morbius, how are things your way this evening? Great to see you back. Thanks for joining in the chat. So yes, this is My Left Eye, a channel all about politics and society from a left-wing perspective. And tonight is the weekly PMQs live stream. That's going to be the bulk of the show. Keith returns after he's been on his travels actually. Racked up quite a few air miles this week, as old Keith. Well, again, I'll just quickly fill you in on the details about that. He was, of course, in Saudi Arabia. Yes, Saudi Arabia, because he's very big on human rights. Being a human rights lawyer, you know, in case he's never mentioned that. And former Director of Public Prosecutions. That's a secret, you know, just keep that to yourself. He doesn't like people to know that about him. He's also been to Cyprus, where British, yes, British Air Force personnel are spying on Palestine at the behest of Israel. So he's been on a very good humanitarian mission this week, while he's been jet setting. Andy Carter, great to see you in the chat too. How have you been? Oh, actually, Andy, thanks for posting the Palestine flags. Also, was it you in the comments for the video? Thank you very much for the comment, by the way. The 3 trucks. There's been some curiosity as to the significance of the 3 trucks, or if that was a typo, just let me know. I have been curious about that. But no, great to see you, brother. Hope you're having a great week. We're just over hump day. We'll be settling into the House of Commons very shortly. Also the latest on the CEO assassin, alleged assassin. A couple of developing details, plus a couple of other curiosities. I mentioned a few curiosities I had on Monday's live stream. A couple of other ones have cropped up. Some of them have sort of been explained to me to a level that I'm satisfied with, others haven't, but other stuff's developed. Yeah, so that's one of the topics, just very quickly before we dive into PMQs. As well as a bit about this farmers' protest. That's why the Farage meme was making a bit of a comeback at the start of the live stream. Yes, he's been rearing his Toady-like face at the protest again. Not sure if Clarkson was there too. The man whose campaign did detrimental harm, of course, to the farmers of this country, had the gall to try and spearhead today's protest. And they're all there in tractors, of course. You've probably seen some of the pictures and stuff by now. So I will be touching on that, as well as the latest from the Middle East, of course. Well, it's all happening this week, isn't it? A couple of comedy clips sprinkled in there as well. So that's coming up on the stream. So yeah, thanks for jumping in the chat, Andy and Morbius. Other great ways to help support the channel and give us a boost on the algorithm, you can give us a thumbs up. You can subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and then you can join the chat just 60 seconds later. And share around your social media as well. And speaking of which, we did the Blue Sky launch on Monday, so please do feel free to add us there. I'll start with that one for the links. So it's My Left Eye UK at bsky.social at bsky.social. I think that's right. So that's for Blue Sky. My Left Eye UK. It's the same handle at My Left Eye UK for Twitter. And also on Mastodon, that's just at My Left Eye with caps at the start of each word. So do give us a follow. And, we'll follow you back, of course. Also, super chats, I hereby announce are open, as well as super thanks if you're watching back on a replay. If you'd like to consider supporting the channel in that way, or the membership, you can, excuse me, you can add your name to these fantastic people you see before you for just 99 pence. And there's some perks and benefits to signing up as well. It's very cheap. It's cheaper than a tasty hot beverage down your local coffee emporium. Many are available. Sorry, no free plugs for the corporations on My Left Eye. Except if we happen to be discussing excuse me. Let's have a quick sip. There we go. Sorry, I had the heater on before, it just gets a bit dry. Unless we're mentioning corporations as part of an ongoing news story. For example, the Mangione case, you know, the fast food restaurant he was arrested in, for example, or the coffee emporium itself that the alleged shooter was seen in shortly before the incident. And thanks in the chat. Is that's two separate? Yep. Gifted membership from Andy Carter and a membership for Morbius. Thank you very much for that. So Spitfire Chef 821, if you are listening. That's some name. Hope you enjoy your perks. More members only content to come, of course. Right, I'll get cracking in a moment. I've got the latest Noreen Skinner clip featuring someone who we're probably going to see a bit of in the bulk of the show in PMQs, which is my first and genuine reaction to, by the way. I've not seen it before. Angela Rayner, or in this case, Andreva, I believe is the alter ego that Noreen Skinner's created. Been interviewed by Laura Kuhnberg, I believe. That's the, again, alternative persona. Really good impersonator. I do suggest you check her out if you've not done so before. And if you haven't, you're going to see the latest clip here. That's a really good take on the Laura Kuhnberg show, by the way. Thank you very much for throwing up the Palestine flags and the static emojis as well. A few examples there from Andy. we'll definitely be hearing from a couple of those characters in the static emojis today as well. Keith, Lindsay Hoyle, hopefully not 30p Lee, but it's inevitable that we'll hear from the first two. We did talk a little bit about 30p Lee on the last live stream, didn't we? His ridiculous insinuation that today's men, or perhaps himself included, have had to endure the hardship of the Battle of the Somme. So if he does manage to get a turn, it'll probably be another absolute clanger. Blowsnake, great to see you too. You're just in time for the comedy clip. And then I do want to get diving into the stories. So this is Noreen Skinner with Andreva on Laura Kunsberg. Pronunciation's important, I think, there for legal reasons.
Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking to Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. Angela, welcome. Let's start with talking about something that all of us viewers at home, I'm sure, would really like to know the answer to. Why are you, in fact, so shit?
Oh, right, we're going straight there, are we, Laura? Yeah, I'm not rising to this.
So let's talk about the housing situation. Now, for the last week or so, you and Keir have been busy saying that people are naysayers or blockers if they don't want to go with the policy to build houses in certain areas. Now, may I remind you of your picture in 2017? This is you. You don't look very good, if I'm honest with you. But this is a bunch of people from your constituency who don't want houses to be built in that area. Does that mean that you are in fact a naysayer or a blocker?
Look, what I want to do is I want to streamline the whole process and make sure that people can get onto the property ladder and then work with them on a collaborative basis so that they can decide what's right for them and where the new property should be built according to what suits them.
Sorry, you are using a lot of technical jargon there, Angela.
Oh, did I? Sorry about that. Look, what I was trying to say was I want to find the right places to build the houses.
Still a lot of jargon.
Look, I just want to build...
Sorry, viewers just aren't going to understand what you're saying.
You and me both know I don't talk perfect, alright? So don't you dare start with me.
So let's move on. Let's talk about immigration and what that means for people's jobs, like builders and so on.
Right. Well, what we're going to do is...
Sorry, still don't understand you. So we've got one more question from Clive from Coventry. He wants to know, Angela, why are you so shit?
Right, that is it. You and me, Laura, we're going outside right now. Are you ready for it? I don't think so. My gloves have come off, babe.
So join me next week when I'll be talking to the gorgeous Boris Johnson about his fantastic new book and just about how hard it was for him in number 10. See you next time. No, Angela, don't throw that at me.
Come get it, Laura.
Noreen Skinner there, give her a follow, that was brilliant. That's the first time I've seen her doing Laura Kussenberg. Really spot on, really spot on. And yeah, a Scot taking the mick out of a Mancunian because of how thick their accent is. Are you taking the piss? Angela Rayner of Ashton-under-Lyne. Brilliant. Also, speaking of brilliance, it's brilliant to see Red F in the chat. Just jumped in as well as RC Pilot. Fantastic to have you back. And Guitar Guy, great to see you too. Doc Davies also in the house. I didn't actually intend to do that then. Is there a doctor in the house? Yes there is, it's Doc Davies. Wonderful to see you as always. I just created your own customised introduction there, Doc. great to see you. So as you can see, she's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, so check her out. Not sure if she does any live stuff as well. I know that Matt Green, who we feature, quite often does. Also, I've got another one that is a comedy clip from a different content provider coming up later. No spoilers though. We'll get into the tidbits of news before we dive into the old PMQs. Just one sec, guys, I'll check we're all queued up and good to go. Okay, all set. We'll go to Mangione first. Just skimming over these articles, people, not really going to get into really granular detail about them. There's only a few minor updates as well as a couple of new curiosities where this story is concerned, so where evidence against Mangione is concerned, some fingerprints have been found that match those taken at the crime scene, apparently on a water bottle and like a power bar, a protein bar, that's what I meant to say, power bar, but one of these protein power bars. And as he was being escorted into court, he's shouted something out. Now it's understood, this is the other major development as far as his defence is concerned, is he's claiming that the evidence when he was arrested at said fast food chain, which I won't give a free plug to because, well, BDS for a start. You know the one I'm talking about. Anyway, the manifesto, apparent manifesto that was allegedly found on him, the murder weapon, again allegedly, so on and so forth. He's saying they were all planted. Other elements of his defence also include the state of his mental health, as far as I'm aware. It's very brief, this. Just make out. I believe that was the media are completely out of touch, and it's an absolute insult to the people of the country. And then something like, let's just have a quick listen again. I couldn't make out the last few words there. Something experience? Something experienced? Not sure about that. Well, he definitely made mentions of the media and trying to take people for fools. There's something about this, I can't tell what it is exactly yet. There are a few things that smelt fishy, which I mentioned on the Monday live stream, like I said. There's a couple of other things that have come up as well since then. Let's oh, sorry, was it all mute? Jesus Christ, sorry about that. Was that music? Let's try again. Sorry if it was muted.
Down, down.
That's completely out of touch and an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
They really wanted to get him in there quickly, didn't they, by the way? Yeah, absolutely, like, literally bundled right up against the wall. And then quick, in the door. So the latest things that appear suspicious as well. Have you seen this YouTube video that's been going around? Apparently, moments, we're talking moments after he was arrested, a video on a channel that the channel is just his name, Luigi Mangione, and it's from a verified account on Twitter as well, and it's just over a minute long. There's a minute-long timer, and then it says the date. It says the date that he was arrested, and then it says soon with 3 dots. It's a very short video, you know. Gotta knock that up rather quickly. And also on, I think this was on his Twitter, some sort of reference to the Joker. Now this has prompted some speculation, I should say. I'm not, again, like I said on Monday, trying to get into the old conspiracy theories or anything. Just things that seem odd. Things that seem odd. Now, this channel, this YouTube, not this YouTube channel, not My Left Eye, I'm talking about Luigi Mangione's parents' YouTube channel. Some people are thinking could have been taken by opportunists who, knowing that the algorithm was going to be buzzing about it, immediately knocked up this video, created a channel in his name, and then just put it out, you know, after the news broke that he got arrested. That's one possibility. It's also worth noting that when he was arrested, it said that he was sat on his laptop and was still sat at the laptop as he was probably being read his Miranda rights. Some CCTV footage of this could surface sometime, who knows. And they're probably arguing over how much money for the rights at this point. So yeah, there's a couple of things. I won't go on about it too much. That's just a bit of an update since Monday. If you've heard anything, then please do post in the chat. Mobius, Luigi did nothing wrong, Bowser had it coming to him. Nice one. Super Mario Brothers reference there. Yes, the well-known item of assailants, the water bottle. That has actually sparked my curiosity a little as well, to be honest. I'm not sure how close to the murder scene these items were found. Must be pretty close if the police found them and dusted for prints. Someone who's supposed to be quite intelligent from what initial reports are, without gloves on or anything, drank from a water bottle, ate a protein bar, and they just didn't dispose of them in a bin or a trash can, as this. That was very poor. The accent, anyway. Really? Another factor as well this could perhaps be the dispute with healthcare firms itself. He suffered a back injury, apparently, and then sort of went AWOL, disappeared for a while. Which could be a factor in the motivation, that if it is he who is the culprit. And it says this manifesto thing was 3 pages long. But from what has been sort of leaked out, it doesn't seem like 3 pages worth to me. There might be more to come there, so that could be a bit of a hint, a bit of a clue. Oh, I just need to quickly make sure I'm on live chat instead of top chat. If you go to the top there, make sure you change the settings. I do recommend that. Make sure everybody's messages can be seen. Just always seems to default to top chat for some reason. You're right there, Mobius, about mental health issues affecting high IQs. Look at Nikola Tesla. Yeah, the poor fellow died without a penny to his name. He got conned by people who stole his inventions. He wasn't very savvy on copyright and patenting and the law where that's concerned, about ownership and intellectual property, that kind of stuff. But that's another matter entirely. Right, I'll leave that there then for Luigi Mangione, the alleged assassin of the United Healthcare CEO. Forgot the name of the company then. Up next, quick update on the Syria situation. Seriously. Oof. Please forgive me for that pun. Oh, speaking of puns, I didn't mention yet, for anybody who's new to the Brews at 10 on my left eye, we're always good for a tea-based pun, and if any words end with TY, please do liberally replace it with the word tea. Now, as we all know, Israel was straight out of the blocks as soon as Assad buggered off to Moscow and invaded Syria, which, you know, is in the process essentially of being carved up between the United States, Israel, and possibly Turkey as well. And it is unfortunately a recipe for another civil war. I'm not a defender of the Assad regime any more than I'm a defender of any regime. But this is where the politics and the action has led, as apparently further cities were seized today by so-called rebel forces. Because you see what's happened now, people, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. Some of the mainstream media appear to have woken up and become aware of the difference between terrorists and resistance fighters. Have you noticed that? These bad guys are bad, these bad guys are good. Everybody got that? That was probably, you know, not a direct quote from Anthony Blinken or the likes. Right, let's just have a bit of a look at this then. Sorry, started to waffle there. The IDF says its Air Force and Navy have conducted more than 350 strikes since Saturday night. And here we are on Wednesday night, people. That's a lot of strikes. 350. And that's taken out an estimated 70 to 80% of Syrian strategic military assets from Damascus to Latakia. They include fighter aircraft, radar and air defence sites, naval ships as well as weapons stockpiles, the IOF said. That's Israeli oppression forces, not defence. You see, and make sure you're sitting down, people, while I lay this bit of truth on you. You won't believe it. By definition, in defence, don't you surely you have to be within your own territory, i.e. defending that territory. If it takes place externally of said territory, then it has to be aggressive or oppressive in this case. Yeah? By definition alone, IDF. I do say IDF a lot though, but that's the truth of the matter really. Israel cats. Israel cats. I've heard some stupid names in my time. That's Israel cats. It's cats with a K and a Z. Just the way it sounds. The defence minister, who's probably responsible for a fair bit of war criminality himself. Anyway, for what it's worth, he said the Navy operated last night to destroy the Syrian fleet with great success. Some shots there of the skyline. I saw some pictures earlier of the aftermath of the destruction of the fleet, the naval fleet. Just some of the geography there. Damascus towards the south, Aleppo which fell before it to the north. Latakia is also one of the other cities that have fallen today as well. Things have been pretty quiet about Bashar al-Assad, to be honest, for the last couple of days since we heard that he was holed up in Moscow. But Hayat Tahrir al-Sham appear to have prepared to install some sort of interim government at the moment to keep infrastructure functioning, basically. So that's the latest on the shit show in the Middle East, specifically about Syria. And you're right there, RC. Preemptive strikes are offensive tactics. Preemptive strikes. If you went up to someone in the street and smacked them in the face and you turned round and said, "Oh, I thought they were going to hit me." What's the difference? It's just so messed up. It's just so messed up. Preemptive. You're supposed to do what they do in the films and you get James Bond in there or something like that. Isn't that what happens? You know? And then at the last moment, as the bomb ticks away or whatever it is that's going on, the ticking clock moments in the film, he saves the day and then goes off to do some more half-cut misogyny. Isn't that what is supposed to happen? Super Tiny. A very warm welcome, and you might have a very warm cup of tea. Great to see you. Yeah, You can do the French puns if you like with thé. Thé is French for tea. J'ai un thé au lait ici ce soir. Madame et monsieur, ma breur et ma soeur. Et mon soeur. Je m'excuse. And speaking of French, without further ado, I think we'll move on to PMQs now. That's just the latest from Syria. I think that was a particularly well improvised segue there. I want some credit, I want some kudos for that. Thank you very much. Your tea's cold and tastes identical to San Miguel. Well, isn't that the strangest thing, Super Tiny? Wonder why that might be. Wonder what particular brand of tea bag you're using. Who knows? It's that Spanish tea, isn't it? They come over here with their Spanish tea and try and take away our hard-fought English tea. Yes, that was made here in England, where we're notorious producers of tea leaves, agriculturally honest. And how dare they come over here and try and change the very fabric of our culture, which our fathers fought. You know what? I'm going to get in my I don't have a tractor, but I'm going to look into getting one, and then I'll get into it and go to Parliament. That'll show them. I did say I'd mention the farmers' protest as well. I'll talk maybe a little bit about that after PMQs. Before we get started, for anyone who's not familiar with the rules, we do try and get through Keith's drone and whatnot, and the sight of Rachel Reeves's robotic gaze. With a light-hearted game, we just keep a tally of how many times a couple of phrases are spoken. So if you hear black hole, you can see the logos in the top right corner there. So £22 billion black hole. Also deliver. And then anytime delivery is uttered, Postman Twat comes delivering. He's on his rounds again. I better get the counter up as well. Did I reset the counter? Let's find out. No, I didn't. So last week's results was a resounding 8-3 to Black Hole. There have been some low-scoring draws recently, but the last victory for Black Hole was quite a while ago. Time could be up, could be getting replaced by another phrase next week. I think this is definitely the last chance. It was almost even for a little bit, I think, last week, and then Postman Twat just absolutely took off on one. He's like a postman on steroids. San Miguel is made in the UK, is it? Well, it'd be brewed in the UK, yeah. Yeah. The same way, you know, in Manchester there's a Foster's Brewery. That's in Trafford Park, by the way. Chris, great to see you. Octotastic, solidarity to you. Don't worry about not being here at the start. You can always catch up or put it on 1.5 times speed or whatever, or for anyone who's really late and listening back on 2 times speed.
What happens when I put my voice really high like that?
Well, I guess I'll have to wait for the feedback on that one. It is piss, not Foster's. Other beers are available, of course. So, yeah, let's not get too distracted. That is essentially it for the rules of the game. Try and throw a few relative memes in and clips while we get through, so keep an eye out for that. If I do, as I do now occasionally, now and then, miss a deliver or a black hole, please do give us a shout out in the chat. Let us know about the audio levels as well. Thanks for your feedback on that recently. A couple of minor technical glitches lately, and with a fantastic excuse me, audience like yourselves, they soon get amended, so thanks again. Right, hold on to your hats, and if you're not wearing a hat, hold on to your hair, and if you haven't got any hair, well, grab hold of some oxygen. Let's go. Take it away, Lindsay. You flannel. Just line this up. That's close enough. That'll do. And yeah, there she is straight away, Angela Raynaud from Ashton-under-Lyne, from the opening comedy clip. Well, sorry, that wasn't her. That was Ange Raver. They are definitely not the same person for legal reasons.
Andy MacDonald.
Number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I start by welcoming the fall of Assad? The people of Syria suffered for far too long under his brutal...
He was in with a bullet there, pardon the expression.
Far from certain. We've been talking to regional and global
These
allies
are the bad,
to ensure
these are the
that
good,
it's a
bad
political
people who have
solution
brought him down.
protect civilians and minorities, and absolutely rejects terrorism and violence. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others, in addition to my duties in this House.
I shall have further sausages later today.
Later on today.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker.
Meetings.
May I associate myself with the remarks of the Prime Minister in welcoming the fall of Assad and the hope now for the Syrian people. Mr. Speaker, since it returned to Labour control under Mayor Chris Cook, Middlesbrough Council has not only been taken out of government intervention in terms of children's services and a best value notice, but is also on track to becoming financially stable. I know the Prime Minister will want to join me in congratulating Mayor Cook and the Council on its recent successes. But after 14 years...
We talk about Edinburgh Council. Why don't you talk about that? The inappropriate messages to Ukrainian refugees.
Will unwind austerity and provide the resources councils need to properly serve our communities.
Prime Minister.
Well, I join him in paying tribute to the Mayor and all local representatives across the country who do a fantastic job, even when funding was cut to the bone under the last 14 years of the Tory government. Mr. Speaker, we're boosting local government funding by £4 billion, investing £1.6 billion to improve roads. And I was proud to see the work on the carbon capture cluster in Teesside, which will create 2,000 new jobs.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Prime Minister didn't seem to want to talk about appointing fraudsters to his cabinet. In fact, he seemed to want to talk about immigration. So let's talk about immigration. He has relaunched yet again.
Don't have a great
many new targets, 6
that.
milestones, 5 missions. But why was cutting immigration not a priority?
Speaker, I'm glad she now wants to talk about immigration. Last week she said she didn't, and for good reason.
this is something, and I'm not defending Starmer here by any means, his 6 targets in the latest relaunch were absolutely abysmal. But the main thing the mainstream media, and definitely shit shows like GBBs, have done is press him on why he's avoiding the issue of migration when, far from it, he's lurched to the right to try and bait voters away from parties like Reform, and also essentially just copied and pasted the Tories' own phrase, "stop the gangs," is Labour's clarion call where that's concerned. So he has been going on about it in the same way that the Tories did, and they failed on it with absolutely ridiculous plans like the Rwanda scheme. Just money down the drain.
Because the previous government presided over record high levels of immigration. The figures just a few weeks ago, nearly 1 million on net migration. That is unprecedented. A one-nation experiment in open borders under the last government. And she was the champion. She stood up and praised the then Tory Home Secretary for listening to her on removing caps on migration visas. So she was applauding it. Now she's furious about what she was campaigning for. We will drive it down. We will drive down lawful migration. We'll drive down illegal migration.
Champagning? What they're champagning for?
He talks about open borders. He was the one campaigning for free movement. I was in this house asking for a lift on skilled migration. He was there supporting all of the people who should not have been in this country. He wanted us to relax immigration. But as he's so keen to talk about the past, let's look at his record. 4 years ago, the Prime Minister signed a letter...
This is the "You're Worse Than We Were" part of PMQs, which seems to have been a regular occurrence since Keith took over, and definitely since Kemi Bad Enoch was on the opposition bench as well.
Elliott had 17 convictions, including for knife crime. After his deportation was blocked, Elliott went on to murder someone. He was able to stay here and murder because people like this man campaigned against deporting criminals.
Appalling, atrocious, dreadful. The far right, the right wing in general, will always attempt to highlight cases where migrants have committed violent crimes without omitting the fact that overall migrants don't commit a lot of crime. They do want to integrate into society. They don't want to get into trouble. That's not to say that there aren't those who do, but proportionately it's far less than the natives of the country that they migrate to. You know this, Kemi. And the fact that you can say such things, having a family history of migration as well, I think is really double standards and sickening, and you really have sold out to some truly terrible policies and ideology here. Really, really have.
Will he apologise for signing these letters?
Mr. Speaker, I'd firstly remind her that when we're in the number now, under their watch, of migrants coming to this country, nearly 1 million, is over 4 times the number when we're in the EU. They lost control of the borders. And
you're right, Super Tiny, we need devolved government. We need a people's house, is what we need. We need citizens' assemblies, and we need a house of the people. Because though
Mr. Speaker,
this house, this place, they have to refer to it as this place, and the House of Lords as the other place under the protocol. But I'm not there, so I don't have to stick to the King protocol, so I'll call it whatever I want. instead of the House of Commons, we should have a People's House. But the fact that they call it the House of Commons, when they are all by definition upper class. Yes, even Jeremy Corbyn is technically upper class by definition. These people are on salaries of at least £80,000 a year, which does put them into the top 5% of earners in the UK. That's undeniable. So therefore, how can it be said to represent the people when, as we know, it's all bunged full of multimillionaires, business types? And that's the problem. These aren't politicians. Most of them are business people playing politics, or in Starmer's case, a lawyer playing politics. And that's why they're all so crap. That's why they haven't got the first clue about economics, and as well as that, also why a lot of them lack any sense of morality whatsoever, because all they're bothered about is profit. That's the state that we're in. And I mean that in terms of the nation state as well.
Ludicrous assertion. He is the one who was repeatedly signing letters. He even asked us to pause all deportations. He asked us to pause all deportations. He doesn't want to talk about his past, Mr. Speaker, but that letter is just the tip of the iceberg. There is more. The Prime Minister actually complained that the immigration system was working to deter migrants rather than provide support. He said, and I quote, that he was proud to have served as Jeremy's shadow immigration minister. He boasted that he took the last Labour government to court for cutting benefits for asylum seekers. He said he would never set a target-based approach to immigration. He wants to talk about immigration. Let's talk about his record. We can talk about it all day. I have committed... Mr. Speaker?
What's with the sulkathon going on behind? Can be Bad Enoch. I know they got Bad Enoch. Oh, dear me. They did get thrashed at the last election, but over a right shoulder as we look. Arms folded, sulking, and on the left, this lady with a face like a slapped arse. They don't look happy at all.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister says he wants to talk about immigration. I have committed to a cap on migration. Why won't he?
Mr. Speaker, she talks about my record. For 5 years, I was the chief prosecutor prosecuting people who went to prison, many of whom were then...
The chief prosecutor prosecuting people under Director of Public Prosecutions, prosecutionarily.
In prison. And she presided over record numbers of asylum seekers in this country, a record number of lawful and irregular migrants. That is 14 years when they lost control of the borders. They set a cap for each of those 14 years. It wasn't hard, it didn't stop people coming, and it got a record number. They should apologise for what they've done with their open borders policy.
Mr. Speaker, he did not answer a single...
Do you want to leave? If you've not got the guts to stand up to the comments, you shouldn't be in here.
Mr. Speaker, he did not answer a single question. He never answers questions. He wants to talk about the past. The fact is, we've acknowledged where things went wrong. He will never take responsibility. He will never take responsibility. The fact is, he has...
Well, we're further right than you are. No, we're further right than you are.
Since he came into government...
You can tell it's pantomime season, can't you?
Small boats arrivals,
14 years. Very good, Andy Carter.
Increased by nearly 20%. His own MPs are complaining about having to house asylum seekers. So can the Prime Minister tell the House how much more his government will spend on hotel accommodation because he scrapped the deterrent?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd invite her to tell us what went wrong under the last government, but it'd take us all afternoon. Mr. Speaker, we are going to smash the gangs that are running this bile trade.
See?
We signed a landmark agreement with Germany this week.
Order. Mr. Philp, you've been very loud. I think now we're going to have a little bit of silence from you, Prime Minister.
This week we signed a landmark agreement with Germany. She should be welcoming that, because that will make sure we have the powers to take enforcement action across the country.
Do you remember when John Bercow was so witty and the way, he was a Tory, but the way he would put his remarks, and now we're going to have a bit of quiet from you, aren't we? If do you want a cup of tea? Is that what you want? Hey. Oh, it's embarrassing.
Where it is needed. We've set up the Border Security Command. We've committed £75 million on top of the existing
I'll do the stuff
million.
about tea.
We're extending the powers
Thank you very
the
much.
counter-terrorism-like powers. We've retained 9,400 people who shouldn't be here. A record flight got off. They talk about getting the flights off. They did it for years. They didn't succeed. We got the flights off.
From me to you to T to you.
Mr. Speaker, he says he wants to smash the gangs. The only thing he smashed is his own reputation. The fact is, what he has been agreeing is not going to do anything. The cost of the Iraq agreement is £500,000. That won't even buy a house in his constituency. Many of the things he's taking credit for are our agreements. Let's talk about what he put in his manifesto. The Prime Minister promised to end asylum hotels. He promised, he's the Prime Minister now, he promised, but in Altrincham and Peterborough, his government is expanding the use of asylum hotels because he unilaterally disarmed the deterrent. In fact, Mr. Speaker, a man who arrived by small boat told Sky News he was happy Labour were in power. That man said the Conservatives, and I quote, wanted to deport us, but Labour are making the procedure easier for us. He's right, isn't he?
Bearing in mind as well, they literally just paused asylum claims on people coming from Syria, a situation that obviously we helped create, just stereotypically done. We create the problem, and then we shut the borders for refugees. That did happen. Again, I'm not defending Starmer. But just this, we're stronger on migration than you are. This is what it's all led to now. This is the road that we're walking down with two right-wing parties.
Speaker, I really thought she should welcome the Iraq deal. Anybody who wants to deal with this vile trade would have welcomed it. She should also welcome the German deal that we did this week. Many of the boats that are finding their way to the Channel are coming through Germany. That is well documented.
There's been
a difficulty in taking enforcement action, which if she spent more time researching that than her terrible jokes, she would know about.
That's rich coming from you, Keith. It really is.
Action in Germany to stop those boats getting to the coast. That is effective action. She should welcome it. It's really good news. All law enforcement think it's a good thing. Why does she think it's a bad thing?
Because the numbers are going up, Mr. Speaker, under his watch. The Prime Minister has consistently...
They're not going to talk about anything else, are they, these two? They're not going to talk about anything else.
Defended terrorists like Hizb ut-Tahrir in the European Court. He argued all immigration law had a racist undercurrent. He voted against life sentences for people...
At this point, I would welcome a planted question from a backbencher in a constituency that I haven't got a damn clue where in the hell it is, asking about, I don't know, bin collection days or something like that would be more refreshing to the ear than this back and forth about migration. Given all the domestic and international affairs at the moment, and this is what they want people to this is what they want people to believe is the main problem in society, when it's the cuts that both of them, Tories and Labour, are implementing, with a litany of other things as well. It's all on them. We all know, people, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, the enemy does not arrive by boat, they arrive by private jet.
He voted against more than 100 measures to control migration. He even said it was wrong. He even said, Mr. Speaker, that it was wrong when the Conservatives took away Shamima Begum's citizenship. Now he has appointed her defence lawyer as his Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, events in Syria mean we may see more small boat arrivals. For once, will he take the
I
side of the
wasn't
British
specifically
people
referring
and
to
stop
Exeter
citizenship
or anywhere
from
else
jihadi
specifically
terrorists and supporters of Assad
with that
who want to
comment
come
about the
back and destroy
backbencher.
this country.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was Director of Public Prosecution for
what?
5 years.
God, knock
Unlike
me over
anyone
with a
on their
feather.
benches, I was prosecuting for 5 years hundreds of thousands of criminals. That includes huge terrorist gangs, rapists. I was working for 3 of those 5 years with the then Home Secretary Theresa May, who commended...
Shall I go there? We know one criminal who you didn't prosecute, and I won't directly say who that was. Rattle, rattle.
Did the work that I did at the end of those 5 years. So for her to stand there and say, I haven't done anything in law enforcement, I dedicated 5 years of my life to law enforcement, locking up criminals, which is more than she can say. And it would be easier to take the opposition seriously if they actually got serious. Not a slither of remorse, not a hint of contrition. It's like the arsonist complaining about the people who are trying to put the fire out. And all they do is come every week with more and more complaints. Just wait till they get their hands...
It's almost like Keith's been watching the stream now, avoiding saying black hole and delivering. He's moved back to the one that we used to count, which was how many times he mentions he used to be Director of Public Prosecutions. He'd be like 8-0 up by now. The prick.
Speaker, since in the last couple of months, since I spoke to the Prime Minister here about the need for social and industrial investment.
Oh, thank God. Oh, it's come to save us. It's, of course, it's Noah Law, of course, from St Austell and Newquay. I know where St Austell and Newquay is, actually.
Unique national identity. Will the PM join his minister on that visit in the spring to meet with the industry firsthand and spell out a roadmap for Cornwall to helping Britain become a clean energy superpower?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend. He's a champion of the extraordinary potential of Cornwall, particularly in our transition to clean power by 2030. Next week we'll publish our English devolution white paper, setting out our ambitions to move power from Westminster into every part of England, including Cornwall. And I know he and his colleagues are meeting the Deputy Prime Minister to discuss this next week.
Devolution
Leader
of
of the Liberal
government.
Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While Syrians are rejoicing at the overthrow of the brutal Assad regime, many people then around the world are worried about what comes next, as the Prime Minister indeed said, with the threats of extremism, ISIS terrorism and unsecured chemical weapons. Only an open political process can bring peace and
Didn't he say that they're the good guys now? They're the good bad guys, Ed. Keep up. They used to be the bad guys, now they're the good bad guys.
That President-elect Trump said about Syria, and I quote, "The United States should have nothing to do with it." If America walks away and steps away, will he step up and work with other allies to provide British leadership over Syria?
Prime Minister.
He's right to say this is a very serious...
That's not going to happen in a month of Sundays, is it? Clearly Israel have got the sights set on Syria. Jinx, Keith. They've got the sights set on Syria, so that obviously means that the United States come in tow. They are, one and the same. Symbiotic.
Ensure that this is peaceful, it is political, and it's rejection of terrorism and violence. This could be a turning point, but in the past we've always thought that what comes next is necessarily better. That hasn't turned out to be the case, and that's why we're working so hard on this and showing the leadership that he and the House would expect from this government.
Sir Ed Davey.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for that reply, and I hope we can continue to work on a cross-party basis to do Britain's role in securing peace and stability in the Middle East. But moving on to another subject, Mr. Speaker, British farmers are the best in the world. Yeah. They are the best in the world.
Best at dodging taxes.
Of family farms, where from generation to generation a commitment to high quality food, to our precious environment, animal welfare is passed down. But family farms were let down badly by the last Conservative government. with their botched transition to new payment schemes and their unfair trade deals with Australia and New Zealand that have undercut British farmers. Now, many family farms feel the government's budget will be the final blow. So will the Prime Minister change course and recognise the vital role that British family farms play?
That is a point, actually. Not sure if Farage made it to this session because he was probably too busy doing his photo ops outside, wasn't he? Got into the dress-up box and playing farmer for the day.
£350 million to support farmers in the United Kingdom. That does contrast with the last government, who was an underspend of £300 million in relation to farmers. In relation to inheritance tax, as he knows, in a typical family case, the threshold is £3 million, and therefore the vast majority of farmers will be unaffected, despite the fear-mongering of the party opposite.
Bill Brittle. Mr. Speaker, places of worship are vitally important, not just for practising one's faith, but also for local heritage. The government's Places of Worship grant scheme currently provides much-needed tax relief for religious buildings in need of renovation, but is scheduled to end next year. What assurances can the Prime Minister provide my constituents that the government will continue to support restoring our much-cherished places of worship, such as Holy Trinity Church in Horwich?
Prime Minister.
I thank you for that question and recognise the important roles that these buildings play at the heart of communities, particularly, Mr. Speaker, at a time like Christmas. There are a wide range of funds available for maintenance and restoration, including the National Lottery Heritage Fund's Places of Worship scheme. Details will be confirmed in the usual way by departments at the spending review.
Mr. Speaker, last week my neighbours Omar and Delma Al-Shishkaki, who serve South Belfast as a doctor and a classroom assistant, received the news that they have been dreading. Dalal's mother and brother were among 23 Gazans killed in their tent by an Israeli airstrike in the so-called humanitarian zone of Al-Mawasi, and other family members are fighting for their lives in a barely functioning health system. Prime Minister, the crisis in Gaza is getting worse and not better. None of us in this chamber can end their nightmare.
Take it with me, people. This is what Claire Hanna is going to get back. Keith will say that they are doing everything they can to make sure that Israel is acting within international law, something investigation. That's Israeli internal
and this government have rightly used every tool at their disposal: sanctions on arms and trade and officials against Putin's Russia.
And
when will Israel be held to the same standards for genocide? When will this government
in someone else's country, of
further
course,
sanctions, recognise the state of Palestine, and offer some hope to beleaguered Gazans and many millions who are watching on in horror?
Prime Minister.
Can I start by saying I'm sorry to hear of the dreadful loss of the families of her constituents. There have been far too many examples like that. I was pleased to see that there's now a ceasefire in Lebanon. We desperately need that now in Gaza, something we've been pressing for some time. There's intense talks going on to that end at the moment, as she knows.
Stop spying.
That would provide the space for the hostages to be...
Son of a bitch. Really, the absolute gall, the neck, the nerve on that guy. Just days ago, he was stood on a runway at a Cyprus airbase congratulating them for doing, quote, things that he can't really talk about, but wink wink. We all know what that is. Sending British spy planes to do the bidding of Benjamin Netanyahu, sending F-35 parts. Liar. The UK is complicit. This is now a matter of international law, and the UK is complicit. How dare he?
Allowed out. They've been there for a very, very long time. Desperately needed aid to go in at speed and at scale.
Well, why don't we send the bloody British Army, if we're supposed to be the best army in the world, like we always tell people that we are, and we send them to escort the convoys, and we tell the IOF get the fuck out the way, because this aid is getting through. And you don't want to mess with us because we're the British Army. Apparently the best army in the world. Why don't you do that, Keith? It's because you paid not to, you lobbied not to, you paid and or blackmailed into doing the bidding of international war criminals.
Opens the potential.
Can we see some Palestine flags in the chat, please, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen?
To resolve this ongoing conflict.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituents in the east of Kirkintilly are experiencing a housing emergency. Not enough houses for families or for those fleeing domestic abuse, and what houses there are in drastic need of repair.
Evening, Tommy Gunn. Great to see you.
Does the Prime Minister agree with me that the Scottish Government should be prioritising repairing this housing emergency, but also the funding of local authorities to address this crisis of their own making?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to her for raising this, because in Scotland, house building has ground to a halt. Homelessness is at record numbers. Children in temporary accommodation.
Thanks for the Palestine and Lebanon flags as well.
And this budget was the biggest settlement for Scotland since devolution. So they've got the powers, they've got the money. What they haven't got is any more excuses.
Scotland already hate you, Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The people of Thornbury have been promised a new health facility for more than 20 years, but have seen every proposal fall by the wayside. That's why it was a great.
I'm going to talk over this issue for Thornbury. Apologies to anyone listening in Thornbury. Just on Scotland, I saw, I think it was a poll or a projection about Scottish voting, and the SNP are going to be booting Labour out massively. I know it's early days, yeah, it's only one poll, take it with a pinch of salt, but by all accounts, there's no love for Keith north of the border.
That we inherited from the party opposite.
Would I be right there, Tommy?
In the plan for change last week. As she knows, the Department for Health, NHS England and Local Care Board are working together to deliver for patients in her constituency. It is important, as she'll appreciate, that we go through the proper business case as part of this rebuild. But what I can make sure is she gets a meeting with the relevant minister to be updated on behalf of her constituents.
Peter Lamb.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following years of real terms cuts to their funding, St Catherine's Hospice, serving my constituency of Crawley, has recently made a number of redundancies. Palliative care is hugely important to our communities, and I pay tribute to them for their work. Can the Prime Minister join me in thanking the work of St Catherine's and outline how the government will look to support?
Got disoriented then. I thought that was Jeremy Corbyn sat next to him. I was wondering why he was sat there. It's not Jeremy Corbyn.
The vital role that hospices play in providing support to people at the end of their life and understand the challenges that they face. Most hospices receive funding by providing NHS services, and funding will be set out in the usual way.
Still 0-0.
Jerome Mayu.
Mr. Speaker, losing a farm is not like losing any other business. It can't come back. Now, those are the words of the Prime Minister, those that he said to the NFU in order to get their votes.
You lose a farm, it's massive.
So can the Prime Minister understand
not a set
why
of fucking
farmers
car
abroad in
keys,
the
is it?
England and around the country now think that his administration is duplicitous?
I mean, if you sell it for millions of pounds, and then you have to pay, you know, bit of inheritance tax if you're going to hand it over, what is it, within 7 years of dying or whatever it is. God.
I think everybody welcomes the £5 billion over the next 2 years that we put in the budget to... Well, they shake their heads, I'm afraid they do. £350 million in the last week alone, compared with the £300 million underspent by the last government. On the threshold, as he well knows, in an ordinary family case, the threshold is £3 million.
In an ordinary millionaire family,
the vast majority of farmers will be unaffected.
£3 million of assets. And don't give me all this cash poor nonsense.
14 years of the party
They've got money.
local government. My constituents were recently shocked when Cannock Chase District Council proposed the closure of the Museum of Cannock Chase.
If you're going to say asset rich but cash poor, then Elon Musk is nowhere near the richest man in the world, okay?
And his officials to please meet with me to see what can be done to save our museum and theatre.
Mr. Speaker, they groan at the question. The Leader of the Opposition was saying they're coming to terms with their failures. Well, they're obviously struggling just a bit. I understand it's been a huge loss to his constituency. Councils across the country were at the front line of the last government's ruinous economic failure. We announced £4 billion in additional funding for local government, a real terms increase in core spending power. We will continue to do so, and I will make sure that he gets a meeting with the relevant minister.
Chris Law. These last months have shown that cruel Westminster governments of whichever party continue to target the weakest in society, while the Scottish Government will continue to protect them. Whilst the Labour Party have voted to continue the two-child benefit cap from the Conservatives, the SNP are abolishing it. While the Prime Minister...
Yes, well done.
While the Prime Minister picks the pockets of pensioners of their winter fuel allowance, Scotland's First Minister, John Swinney, has reinstated it. So, Mr Speaker, given support for Labour is plummeting, and support for...
I guess the main point there is obviously when you break down Britain's economy into the individual countries, Scotland's economy is smaller than England's. So how can they find the money to be able to do a U-turn on that policy? Obviously, there's other issues with Scottish finance where energy is concerned as well, of course, but that's another matter. So it really does show Starmer up that Scotland can do the things that he says are impossible because you can't afford it. Although in this session he's yet to respond, but he's not tried to blame it on the £22 billion black hole, which might break the deadlock, possibly.
Scottish independence is once again leading.
Who's going to score first? Could it be 0-0?
Who does the Prime Minister believe makes the best decisions for Scotland?
Prime Minister. Those that were elected in a general election on the 4th of July, they're sitting here.
In centuries past, the three rivers that converge on the centre of Carlisle have made the city highly defendable against invading armies. However, in 1985, 2005 and 2015, those same rivers overpowered the city.
That ball bag could never be a man of the people. I think you're quite right there, Tommy.
What assurances can the Prime Minister give my constituents that the flood defences that the Conservatives promised but failed to deliver will be completed under this government?
Can I start by wishing her a happy birthday? She raises a really important matter for her constituents who faced appalling flooding too many times. And the last government left our defences in a state of absolute disrepair.
That's what takes
Mr.
the
Speaker,
lead.
we're investing £2.4 million
now
this
we've
year,
started.
and the Environment Agency are currently studying options to improve protection in Carlisle. I'll make sure she gets a meeting to discuss the specific options.
Rebecca Paul.
Start doing it horse racing
In recent
style.
weeks, the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, has warned
And
that
his postman,
conflict
who
between
just
Russia
takes
and
the
the
lead
West
and just
is no
out of a
longer
chair,
coming.
is
It has
one of the
already
constituency
come.
MPs
With
whose
Russia
names
poised to
hasn't
spend
come up
more
yet, so I
than
can't
6%
quite
of
read
its
it. And
GDP
in
on its
second
military
place
next
is
year,
£22 billion
the time
black
for
hole as
reviews
Rebecca
and
Paul,
paybacks is
Conservative for
over.
Reigate.
Will the Prime Minister
Comes in with another
recognise
question.
the urgency of the situation and commit to spending at least 2.5% of GDP on defence without further delay?
Mr. Speaker, she's right about the importance of national security, particularly at the
hello.
moment. At the budget, we delivered £2.9 billion increase in the MOD budget. We're pleased to deliver the largest pay rise for our armed forces in 22 years. And we'll set out the path to 2.5
I hope this is going to be
in due
far more
course.
entertaining
That target, of
than that
course, was
evening.
last met under the last Labour government. It wasn't met once
yourself a
in the
drink.
14 years that they were in power.
Thanks for joining us.
Right, McNally.
Mr Speaker, in October 2023, my constituent Mark Somerville received the shattering news that at 43 he had motor neuron disease. Since then, he has set up the Mark Somerville Foundation and is doing incredible work to raise awareness of the condition. Mark is in the gallery today and will speak to MPs later about living with MND. Will my right honourable friend join me in recognising the work of Mark and his foundation and commit the government to doing all it possibly can to support efforts to find a cure for this devastating disease?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for raising this case. He mentioned it to me last night, and I do pay tribute to Mark, who's in the gallery, and the work of his foundation. This diagnosis can so obviously be absolutely devastating, and it's testament, if I may say so, to his bravery and compassion that he is raising awareness of the condition. I think many of us would question whether we're capable of doing what he's doing, given the diagnosis that he's had. Last week, of course, Mr. Speaker, I paid tribute to the inspirational Kevin Sinfield, another incredible champion. And I say to both of them, all those campaigning, we stand with you in this fight.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ron Cornelius...
God, he still exists. For God, he still exists.
His property was seized in what is a very unjudicial process. The Prime Minister has been to UAE. I want to ask the Prime Minister whether, when he went there, did he now demand that Ron Cornelius was freed, given that the United Nations came to the conclusion that his detention was arbitrary and in violation of international law, and following that, would he now make Magnitsky sanctions deliverable on those who are responsible for this after he is released?
Prime Minister.
This is an important case, and of course it's been raised by the government a number of times, including by the Foreign Secretary as part of the trip that I was on. I myself raised human rights issues, but it is a serious case. We'll continue to press for the outcome that I know he and his family desperately want.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr.
We're all in
Speaker.
the big rich club
Stellantis
together.
could not have
We'll
asked
pat each
for
other's
more
backs.
from the workers at the Luton plant. Like every generation
Scratch
of
each other's
Vauxhall
backs,
worker in Luton, they meet every target set. They make every innovation demanded of them. They never give up. Contrast this with Carlos Tavares, the CEO, who days after making the decision to threaten over 1,000 jobs in Luton, quit. Does the Prime Minister agree that in light of this sudden departure of the CEO, Stellantis should review this decision? Do what's right by our town, stay put for good, or until an alternative is found to ensure Luton's manufacturing history is also our future?
Prime Minister.
I thank you for raising it, which is it's obviously an issue of grave concern to her constituents, and the government is totally committed to supporting the workers and their families at this.
Yeah, you're right about the DWP there. Andy, of course, he's responsible for the creation of universal credit, which was widely condemned.
Support is in place. We'll continue to do so because I know it's an issue of considerable concern to her constituents.
Joshua Reynolds.
Ben and Henry, otherwise known as the Ocean Oarsmen, will be rowing across the Atlantic next year for Alexander Devine Children's Hospice in Maidenhead, with a target of raising £50,000. This hospice, Thames Hospice and many others, though, are struggling with rising costs
in a small
and
boat,
the planned increase in
in a
employees'
small
national
boat
insurance.
going across the channel.
So will the Prime Minister join with me in wishing Ben and Henry the best of luck on their journey and take this opportunity to scrap the NI rise for hospices?
Well, can I pay tribute to Ben and Henry and everybody supporting their campaign? It's obviously an important issue. The funding arrangements will be set out in due course.
For retail workers in Bolton North East, the busy Christmas season is overshadowed by shoplifting, which Usdall's latest survey identifies as the leading trigger of abuse, threats and assaults. As the police drop in Bromley Cross, officers welcomed this government's commitment
Just outside of Manchester.
shoplifting and prosecuting repeat offenders. What more can the government do to tackle shoplifting and support retail workers and businesses during their critical holiday season?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank you for raising this, and I've spoken to many who work in our shops who are very, very concerned about shoplifting, and because of the approach that was taken by the previous government, it went out of control. We are bringing it under control. It's not low level. It has a huge impact on other customers, has a particular impact on staff working in supermarkets, and that's why we are
What it is, Keith, is it is a symptom of capitalism. It is a symptom of the wealth gap. It's a symptom of stagnant wages while inflation goes on and prices increase. That is really the core of the problem. You want to get to solving the problem preemptively rather than proactively. That's how you do it. If people could live within their means, they wouldn't feel the need to shoplift. And it's often the case that people who are apprehended shoplifting taking items such as nappies and baby wipes because they can either choose between feeding the child or buying sanitary products for the kid, and it really is tragic that people in society are forced to have to make that choice. It's not because you know, not like Winona Ryder shoplifting, trying to get a kick out of it. It's out of necessity. Yeah, occasionally you'll get the odd teenager shoplifting again for kicks. That's a different thing. But out of necessity, it's on the rise, and it's because of the things like this. And you bring up it happening during Christmas, which is essentially just the annual capitalist festival. Sorry to sound like a bit of a Grinch or Scrooge, whatever. But it's no coincidence that it is that time of year. And shoplifting is increasing. But also the fact that this event, this seasonal event, this festive event will actually increase that wealth gap as the heads of corporations set to make billions over the next weeks, over the next coming weeks. So that's the problem. And you can't just make promises to get rid of it, cracking down, this sort of thing. These words that are supposed to sound powerful and effective, we know it's all just garbage, jargon, boardroom speak, business spiel, if you will. Stamping out, cracking down, these kind of words without any sort of hint as to the actual process of that.
To training police and retailers and supporting specialist analyst teams to crack down on the gangs that are targeting retailers.
Gangs, boats, crackdowns,
in the last few weeks of the last government, we awarded millions of pounds to remote train stations like Hedge End and Swanwick.
Write a bunch of words on pieces of paper, they throw them in the air, and whichever one lands in the fucking hat first, or whatever one they catch first, however they do it, that's the one that they say. It's just a word salad every time. Different combinations.
Under the Accessibility for All scheme. In the first 2 weeks of this government, that was scrapped. Will the Prime Minister use his good offices to give my constituents and stations across this country an early Christmas present and give us our money back, please?
Prime Minister.
Yeah, Keith has to shoplift his fancy glasses now. You're quite right there. Politics Clive, welcome to the chat now that he doesn't get them in freebies because this poor man only has a salary of 6 figures plus backhanders from Israel lobbyists, again, that total 6-figure sums. This poor man, won't someone please think of him as well as the CEOs who are feeling the pinch, like Super Tiny points out, also in the chat. Yeah. What a scam.
I'm grateful for him. This is an important issue for his constituents. The problem is the last government made lots and lots of promises, but they never set aside the money to pay for them. That's why we picked up a £22 billion black hole. They made promises in relation to infected blood, promises in relation to Horizon. They didn't put aside the money to pay for it. We've had to inherit that, to clean it up. We will get on with delivery, but we had to balance the books and stabilise the economy first.
And then back and forth. Delivered takes a lead very quickly.
This past weekend, one of my market towns, Kirkby Lonsdale, suffered a devastating fire, resulting in the loss of a local man's life. The whole town centre was closed and many local businesses have been affected. Sunday was meant to be a day of celebration with Christmas markets, family games and community events, and instead the town faced a tragedy.
Late drama.
Can the Prime Minister tell me how
Absolute
the government can
scenes
support communities like Kirkby Lonsdale
at Westminster
to
Stadium
rebuild and recover after tragedies such as this?
Prime Minister.
I'm grateful to her for raising this awful situation, and I think all of us can only imagine the impact that this must have had on
community events, and instead the town faced a tragedy. Can the Prime Minister tell me how the government can support communities like Kirkby Lonsdale to rebuild and recover after tragedies such as this?
Prime Minister.
I'm grateful to her for raising this awful situation, and I think all of us can only imagine the impact that this must have had on the town, on the families and the friends of the victims of this awful tragedy. And I commend the community, which has come together in an extraordinary way in the aftermath of this awful event. I'll make sure she has a meeting with the relevant minister to discuss how the government can support her community at this vital time.
Final question, Nellie Chance.
Last chance, Blackhall for an
This week I was
equaliser.
contacted by my constituent Sally. She's a GP and she'd called 999 on Monday for a critically ill patient to try to get an ambulance, but couldn't because they were all stuck outside Hereford A&E waiting to unload their patients. At the same time, we know that across the country, medically fit patients are unable to be discharged because of the social care crisis. So can I ask the Prime Minister, what is he doing to fix social care, to fix patient flow through hospitals so that ambulances can get back to saving lives?
Well, I'm grateful to her for raising this case, and it's awful, an example that is all too common because of the fact.
So he started speaking about 3 seconds before he was announced there. Just got halfway through the sentence, and then you heard Lindsay Hoyle. The Prime Minister, like, no one's paying attention to you, Hoyle. Just... oh. No one at all. Right. Last response.
The last government broke the NHS, and she'll have seen the Lord Darcy report that we published on the state of the... No, they should be utterly ashamed of themselves in relation to what they did to our NHS. But she raises a really important point. That's why we put a record amount into the NHS in the budget, £25 billion. We've set out in our priorities what we need to do with the NHS. We'll work at pace on this as hard as we possibly can. She's right to raise it. They should hang their heads in shame.
That completes Prime Minister's questions.
And the final whistle goes at Westminster Stadium. The final score here this evening, well, it was actually at midday, but it's Blackhall 1, Postman Twat deliver 2. Wow, late drama, an equaliser, and then Postman Twat taking the lead again. How's about that, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters? So we're getting quite low scoring, quite low quality as well. The extended back and forth between Bad Enoch and Starmer on migration was particularly bad. Good to see a couple of green issues getting raised, as well as the issue of Gaza as well. We all knew Starmer wasn't going to give a proper answer to that. And I'm still quite shocked at the absolute double standards, but I should really, expect that by now. Coming from himself, Foreign Secretary David Lammy, anytime they answer, I'd say answer, I mean respond. Thanks for throwing up the Lindsay Hoyle static emoji there, Andy Carter. No, it didn't go into extra time. It's been quite a while since that happened. Customarily it's 30 minutes, but they can extend if particular extraneous issues come up. But I think you're quite right there. Blackhall isn't the player that they used to be. As I said, if I'd have switched back to Director of Public Prosecutions, that probably would have won 6 or 7-2. Ah well, it is a game. So I think I'll switch it up next week. Let's try and catch Starmer out. Maybe he has been watching the streams. What do you think? Let me know what you think about that, as well as PMQs overall in the comments if you're watching back on a replay. Thanks for keeping us up to speed with your thoughts in the chat as well, everyone. Move on to something else in just a moment. Let's Just get rid of the scoreboard. Well, I think enough was mentioned in PMQs about the farmers' bloody protests not to go on about it. I will say one thing that jumped into my head. I didn't interrupt the clip with it. Just towards the end there, as someone mentioned, ambulance services, which have clearly been struggling for a long time now, and will continue to do so under Wes Streeting in charge of the NHS. But that got me to thinking of something that I saw earlier, of these protesting tractors blocking ambulances in London, which is something that protest groups, for example Just Stop Oil, who I'm a supporter of, and very proud to be a part of. So obviously faced those accusations in the past. They were of course all completely false. The likes of Piers Morgan and whatnot would cut off clips at the moment that the protesters moved out of the way. But it did appear that the ambulances were trying to get through and the tractors just really didn't give two wet shits. And I do suspect a lot of the same people supporting these protesters, or in fact out in the tractors, they themselves would have been critics. Although, also on the other hand, a lot of farmers are completely aware of the climate crisis, and in fact crop yields domestically in the UK are down 20% this year, purely on based on climate crisis. Yes, 20%, I said, in 1 year. And I've spoken to a lot of farmers. In fact, one of the founders of Just Stop Oil itself, who is one of the Whole Truth 5, Roger Hallam, was an agricultural farmer, now obviously unjustly sentenced to 5 years in prison for taking part in a Zoom call. And something that was a catalyst for his involvement with climate protest was he was literally seeing day by day things deteriorate. So that just pops into my head during PMQs as well. A few links, a few sort of slightly tedious links. See you soon, Super Tiny. Thanks for jumping in. I'll catch up with you soon. Take care. So as I said, I won't go into any articles about the farming protests. Let's move on to a bit more light-hearted comedy. Got another great clip here. Brief, but very good, I should say. Some new regular viewers on the channel will definitely be familiar with, and if you're not, then perhaps you've come across his stuff before. An Irish comedian, Taidgh Hickey, not so much an impersonator as Noreen Skinner is, but really brilliantly worked sort of comedy sketches, mostly based around what's happening in the Middle East recently, which is something he's been absolutely on point with. So this is spot on, the latest one from Taidgh Hickey. Just in case you need any clarity on the spelling, if you do want to check him out, it's, I'm testing myself here, Taidgh is the first name, and it's Hickey with an E, so that's Hickey. That's the Irish spelling, Taidgh Hickey. Alright, take it away.
Come here. It's great what's happening in Syria, isn't it? It's great that the Syrian civil war has reignited. Not for Syrians, I'd imagine. Well, you know, Iran and Russia backed Assad, getting his arse handed to him. Up the rebels, huh? Oh, wow. So you support armed resistance against a notoriously brutal regime like Hamas? What? No. They're terrorists. The guys in Syria are rebels. CNN and BBC said so. You know, they're kind of like the Rebel Alliance in Star Wars. You know those rebels are effectively Al-Qaeda and ISIS, yeah? Like the Americans would back Al-Qaeda, mate. You're not a Putin puppet now these days, are you? Their leader, al-Jilani, literally founded Al-Qaeda in Syria. Used to be deputy to the founding leader of ISIS. Probably went a bit crazy on a gap year, did he? Listen, mate, they couldn't be Al-Qaeda or ISIS. The US are over there fighting ISIS. Really? I think they're mostly there to control Syrian wheat and oil. I mean, Trump and others have said so. Oh, okay. So you're an Assad apologist? Absolutely not. You can hate Assad and also hate self-serving US interventionism. Well, someone's got to step in. But who asked them to? I mean, when are they going to finally stop meddling in the region? When has it ever worked? Iran and Russia, Iran and Russia, Iran and Russia, Iran and Russia!
Wonderful, wonderful. Taidgh, Hickey. Correction on the spelling there. Thanks for the correction there, Andy Carter. It's Taidghg, not DGH or whatever I just said incorrectly. Thanks for the correction there. Sorry I didn't have it spelled out in front of me. Again, bang on point. A lot of double standards coming from the mainstream media where that's concerned, as well as the general public and right-wing broadcasters especially. Okay. Do check him out if you're not familiar. Stick around, people. The stream will be coming to a close shortly here, but I'm going to attempt to redirect. Thank you very much once again to all the members on the channel. Just a final reminder that you can join that list for just 99p. Add yourself to the roster, get yourself some perks. Why not treat yourself? It's only 99 pence. It's cheaper than a tasty hot beverage. You can buy 3 for that. And we do have Kevin Morgan live, so we'll be streaming into Kev. Great stuff. Right, that's all set up, good to go. Please do make sure that you've hit the thumbs up button on the stream before we raid into Kevin Logan. And feel free to liberally share the content across your social media. Give us a follow there too. Okay, so a final thank you very much for joining me on tonight's live stream. I'll be back with you later on in the week. You've been fantastic as always. Thanks for your comments in the chat. Also, thanks for your comments on recent videos and stuff like that. Wonderful to see. I'll jump over with you and might join the chat on Kevin Logan's stream for a little bit. I just need to put the kettle on again and reload the old brew, but I'll be with you there shortly, everybody. So yeah, if I don't see you there, take care, everyone. My left eye, be seeing you soon. Good night. Free Palestine. Lebanon.